weirdest sounds.
Worldwide, people report seeing a strange creature.
It was breaking branches off trees and eating the sap. Its strength was amazing.
From China and Siberia to India and North America.
If I would have known what was going to happen, I wouldn't have come in here.
I just thought this could very possibly be a Bigfoot.
Many believe it's a myth or a hoax.
And he brought a pair of these.
It is a hoax phenomenon, yes. It's also a misperception phenomenon.
But for those who have encountered this creature, there is no doubt.
There's something out there for sure that exists. We're headed up to my primary research area in an undisclosed part of the Adirondacks.
Steve Coles is a former New York private investigator who is now turning his sights on Sasquatch.
This area has had 30 years worth of sighting reports. My lifetime mission is to get some kind of DNA evidence, along with some photographic evidence, audio evidence, to put together a big picture to prove it to science that, yes, the Sasquatch does exist. I know it's out here. I've seen it.
Says his encounter occurred during a camping trip in 2011 as he walked to his car to get batteries.
I get my batteries and I decide to shine my flashlight to the road. And about 300 feet there's this telephone pole, and there was something standing there, 8 foot tall. I can see its reddish, glowing eyes looking back at me. And they're blinking. After about 40 seconds, I moved my flashlight a little bit, twitched it, and it just turned around and walked back in the woods. All I could feel was utter shock. I actually stood and watched it, and it watched me, which was probably the most unnerving thing.
Coles now returns to the site of that encounter.
Hey guys, you ready to do this?
Ready to do it.
With a search team.
Alright, what are we using tonight?
Alright, so what we got tonight is we're going to use employ a DVR system. Also, we brought a bionic ear. We have digital recorders that we're going to place.
Gary Robusto will supervise the team's high-tech gear aimed at capturing evidence.
What's the plan of attack tonight? So I know where to set the equipment up, or I know I have a camera.
Let's deploy the trail cams to our west, deploy the DVR to the east, with the setting I had. Given the history of this place, I think that'll be the best place for the DVR. There's something out there for sure that exists, not just might exist.
First, Kansas is very hard to meet you guys over there.
Something big, something just absolutely incredible. First there was the abominable snowman in the Himalayas, now Bigfoot in South Dakota. people in Little Eagle are so scared that every night squads of men with loaded rifles take off in search of Bigfoot.
Cool's accounts appear similar to eyewitness reports all over the world.
He was breaking branches off trees and eating sap. His strength was amazing. He was probably 4 foot or better across the shoulders. He was probably 7. Eyes were very bright yellow and they were luminescent.
Поворачиваешься, он стоит в куше деревьев, что ли. Я такого видела.
It's a hairy monster on the corner of the woods.
I've never been so scared in my life.
Stories of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, the Himalayan Yeti, the Chinese Yeren, and others have long been told on nearly every continent.
There's a great deal of consistency in Sasquatch reports, most of which appear to be adult males. The large, hair-covered, broad-shouldered, massive-chested animal with a short, thick neck, often described as no neck, long arms reaching below the knee, face with a flattened nose, deep-set eyes, often brow ridges, sometimes a conical head. Pretty consistent.
In North America, eastern reaches of Siberia and China, Southeast Asia, there are remarkable correlations and similarities between the descriptions of an upright, hair-covered creature. In North America, the reports are concentrated in the Sierra Nevada and the coastal ranges, the Cascades, and on up into the Canadian Rockies, and down here into the New England states, upstate New York and western Pennsylvania.
But most in the scientific community do not believe that this creature exists.
To me, I see Bigfoot as a problem. There's thousands of people that claim to have seen it, and there's no physical evidence for it. So either the animal is elusive, or it doesn't exist.
We invent monsters in our image, and a monster version of us is probably going to be a big hairy animal. So right away, it's not a stretch for us to sort of reinvent him independently around the world.
Well, I think it's pretty unlikely that an animal of that size could go undetected in North America for a long period of time.
But investigator Steve Coles and others like him fully believe in the existence of Sasquatch.
That's going to be in the general vicinity of one of the sightings around here. Okay. So that'll work.
Go all the way to the left. I'm just trying to see what I have for a view.
Our strategy is very simple. Set up the technology, call in the Sasquatch, and let them come through our cover.
Roger that.
What we're doing here is we're going to put a motion-activated infrared camera, and once we turn it on, any motion will activate it. It'll take a burst of 6 shots over 30 seconds. This camera will give us a shot anything 40 to 50 feet out.
I'm going to put a digital recorder up underneath the trail cam, so any kind of audio, anything that we can hear, just basically will extend our hearing out there.
With the technology perimeter set, team member Jeff Thomas tests the handheld infrared thermal imaging camera, which highlights anything emitting heat.
If something comes through here in this area, we're going to have it covered. Along with the other trail cameras, the audio traps, we should be good to go.
What could be standing like right behind you? You don't even know. You never know.
Coles and his team are now ready to begin looking for Sasquatch. Sightings, suddenly, without warning, which is exactly the case with a group of Idaho high school students.
I noticed that it was walking fairly easily. The first one I saw the foot through was, it looked like it wasn't foot.
It was February, it was pretty cold. It was an overcast day. It had just gotten done snowing. A lot of the leaves on the trees were gone.
We were gathering data for our environmental science class. We had been up here 2 times before to test the amount of erosion that occurs within the canyon.
Right here, right?
When we first saw it, it was probably over here more. And we got it about when it walked through that corner on the camera.
It was close to the top of that ridge, just walking down, and it looked fairly big and dark, black.
It really stood out in the snow.
I wouldn't say you could make any hair out, though. I'd say more just a dark bulge.
Yeah.
You could really make it out in the snow, though. And, I mean, it was moving pretty well through what was a lot of snow, so...
Like 10 seconds later, I decided to pull out the camera. At that time, it was coming into that clearing. I zoomed in on it, and then it walked in there, I think, and then just down over the top of that ridge.
We just kept watching the thing until it disappeared. After that, one of us kind of like, is that a Bigfoot? And then a couple of us kind of laughed, and then the more we kind of thought about it, you know, we don't really know what it was.
It's obviously something that we don't know. It's obviously something mysterious, but I'm not going to come here and say it was a Sasquatch.
I never really thought too much about Bigfoot before, but this definitely put it in my mind that there's definitely the possibility.
When I first saw it, I was like, that's not a person. I was kind of confused. I was like, I don't really know what it was. I've never seen anything like this.
I thought we should go check it out just to hopefully figure out what it was we saw.
To get up the mountain was really tough. It took us close to an hour, I'd say.
We found the line of tracks that came down the ridge this way.
We saw a lot of snow punches showing that something had definitely walked there recently. There was one particular footprint that stuck out, and you could see some, it looked like toe marks defined in footprint.
I'm in outdoors a lot. I know what a moose track looks like. I know bear tracks. I can tell fresh tracks from old tracks. I haven't really seen anything like that before.
It was a little like, well, that's weird, you know. I don't really know what that is.
Like, it was bigger than a human footprint, but it looked a lot like a human footprint.
When I looked at the track and realized it wasn't anything I had seen before, I just thought, you know, this could very possibly be a Bigfoot.
They contact Idaho State University Professor of Anatomy and Anthropology, Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum.
As a student of both human and comparative primate anatomy, I can offer some expertise in evaluating the likelihood of the image on a piece of film or video being simply a man in a fur suit, or something else, something yet to be accounted for.
Since 1995, Meldrum has been analyzing data from incidents like the Pocatello sighting.
I have to admit my first reaction was, here's some high schoolers that are bored, and here's a fun way to spend the weekend. But what at first glance might have been taken to be just a practical joke started to weave a very interesting story that indicated maybe they did see something that warranted further investigation.
Meldrum, who has amassed more than 200 casts and photos of footprints from reported Sasquatch sightings, examines the photo evidence that the teens captured.
This footprint differs from a human footprint most decidedly by the lack of an arch and in the lack of a well-differentiated ball of the foot. This footprint displays many of the characteristics that I would look for in a typical Sasquatch track. The broad heel, the relatively long heel to length ratio, the toes disposed across the foot in a more squared off fashion, and less differentiation in the size of the big toe relative to the remaining toes. All those features would combine to suggest that this may very well be the real deal.
There are a number of problems with considering this as evidence of Bigfoot.
Dr. Katie Gonda is a biological anthropologist with the University at Albany, State University of New York. She has tracked primates for 2 decades.
In the wild, when you see footprints, you rarely see footprints that are this perfect. Footprints or handprints or variable depth, they're smeared. This looks like a stamp was made. So this footprint actually looks like something that will be marching very hard and moving vertically up and down as it moved through the forest. That's very inconsistent with the way that most animals move. Many animals with a gait like that would be gliding along, and they would be leaving smeared footprints, not footprints with a deep impression. The most significant problem with it is that there's no scale, so it's very difficult to say how big this foot actually is.
The Idaho footprint is inconclusive at best, so Meldrum turns to the video captured by the students.
I'm just impressed. I mean, you can see the outline of it. You can see its joints, the elbow, the wrist, the curve of the hand. What strikes me is when you see that movement, it's this very fluid movement as it retreats into the forest. I get the impression of a massive body with large shoulders and very massive, powerful arm, a low set, forward set head on these massive shoulders.
I never really thought about Bigfoot before, but this definitely put it in my mind.
This may be a video of a fleeting encounter with a Sasquatch, but again, it falls far short of the standard of evidence required to demonstrate the existence of this creature. So in that sense, it's only suggestive.
The footprint that I saw was to be very unlikely to have been made by the animal that was filmed here. This animal is walking kind of bent over. It's not walking along, and it's very clear that that footprint would have been made by something that was really stamping hard and vertically into the snow. Based on that evidence, I would say it would be difficult to conclude that it's anything other than a bear. It looks very much like a bear moving through some brush and then going back down on all fours at the end. That's what it looked like to me.
The mountains of Idaho near Pocatello are home to the North American black bear.
We have lots of known or probable misidentifications. People saw something. What was it? Least likely was that it was a Bigfoot. Much more likely that they saw, say, a bear.
Dr. Joe Nickel is a former private detective turned author, skeptic, and full-time paranormal investigator.
We know that if you have Bigfoot on the mind and you see something in the woods, you got to see Bigfoot when it was actually a bear or anything.
There's not really any evidence to suggest that it's anything other than a bear, and a bear and Bigfoot are presumably roughly equivalent in height.
North American black bears standing on their hind legs can reach nearly 2 meters tall and can weigh to 270 kilograms.
The presence of bears in the forest also creates a pitfall in that enthusiastic investigators often jump to premature conclusions. A flash of fur in the woods is perceived as Bigfoot, when in fact it could very likely be a bear.
Recent research shows that Sasquatch and Bigfoot sightings almost always occur in or near bear habitats.
What these studies conclude is that many of the Bigfoot sightings might actually be black bear sightings.
I've seen a ton of bears out in the wild. I've seen them walk upright. I've seen them walk on all fours. I'm not sure what it was, but I know it was not a bear.
Back in New York's Adirondack Mountains, investigator Steve Coles is counting on capturing that conclusive evidence through his ongoing search for Sasquatch.
We have the technology perimeter, so the whole idea is to get it across the technology perimeter. Knocking is what we believe is a tactile form of communication. A lot of times in areas that have had Sasquatch sightings, a lot of people hear tree knocks, wood on wood, something like this. So what we've surmised is that it may be some form of communication between them. Could be GPS, could be one telling another one that I'm over here. We're really not sure. But a lot of times, people who have done tree knocking and have elicited a response in the middle of the forest, including here. And our series of 5 knocks. We're knocking and waiting, and perhaps it will encourage them to come in and take a look at us.
There's behaviors people report for Bigfoot that are behaviors that are really common in great apes, and calling is one of the behaviors, and the other one is tree knocking.
Mammalogist and anatomist Dr. Esteban Sarmiento has studied primates extensively in the field.
The animal doesn't want to confront you because it might take too much energy for him to beat you up, or he might get beaten up. So it's easier for him to call from far away and tell you, hey, I'm here, be careful.
1, 2, 3. I swear it went that way myself. Stay put. We're hearing something with the parabolic mic. Something that sounds like footfalls. So we got Jeff out there with the thermal imager, scouting around. We're going to send Melissa, Amy, and Stacy up on patrol to the north. See if they're able to hear anything, pick anything up.
3 women patrol the exact stretch of road where Cole says he had his most recent Sasquatch encounter.
We're using what's called a parabolic dish. It enhances anything that's going to be making any kind of a noise or movement up to, 500 yards? 500 yards. What I've got is basically a monocle with the IR light inside it. And what I can do is I can check for eye shine or anything else in the infrared spectrum through here. So I've got the eyes, she's got the ears, we've got the laser thermometer to find any kind of heat signature in the forest as well. Amy the base tank.
The thermal imaging camera picks up something moving nearby.
Did you record?
I did. Yes.
It was elevated, like it was either up a tree or behind a tree. And then it went, as soon as I got to it and got focused on it, it went down and then almost like it hit itself.
Cole's team captures a heat signature on the thermal imaging camera, which highlights and records anything that emits heat.
What is it?
Sure. It's very small, whatever it wasn't anything standing upright or anything, definitively with arms and feet. So, yeah, that was a varmint, apparently.
Most scientists worldwide believe people like Steve Coles are searching for a creature that does not exist.
We know that some of the cases are hoaxes. They've been admitted to, they've been proven. We have a number, for example, of people like Ray Wallace who made fake Bigfoot feet.
He arrived at work early one morning and he brought a pair of these wooden feet. He walked around the construction site like this, in soft soil. And that is how the legend of Bigfoot began.
Another famous hoax was a few years ago. There were those Georgia boys who put together some part of a Bigfoot costume and some rank meat and froze it in ice.
This is a creature that wasn't normal.
The men say they dragged the 7-foot body out of the woods and called noted Bigfoot hunter Thomas Gardy.
I'll tell you this. What I seen, what I touched,
was not a mask that was sewn on a bear hide.
That's a whole pig, guys.
Is it? Oh my God, that's disgusting.
So, the question is, can we human beings, without fail, always tell a real Sasquatch, a real Bigfoot, from a guy in a suit?
But the hoax theory does not make sense to Dr. John Bindenagel, who has studied the Bigfoot phenomenon for 40 years.
As far as the eyewitness accounts go, they go way back to the mid and late 1800s. People were seeing Sasquatches. They didn't know how to categorize them. It was called wild man or a monster.
Bindenagel says the witness accounts from different parts of the world and from separate points in time lead him to believe these sightings are more than just a series of hoaxes.
The eyewitness accounts are very interesting, partly because of the consistency, and partly because it's not like people come forward wanting to talk about this. In many cases, you have to drag it out of them. I think it's a reason for us to listen to them and try to make sense of what they're telling us.
Things
things that are obvious hoaxes are few and far between. You know, when I pull out the drawers in my laboratory in which are archived these footprints, I mean, there are some that are kind of questionable. There's only a few that are obvious, blatant hoaxes.
But one Canadian witness claims it was no hoax, trapped and actively hunted her as she ran for her life.
I've been living here in the Cowichan Valley since 2000, but I came to Vancouver Island in 1991. My husband has taken me through most of the Cowichan Valley via the back roads hunting and deer hunting and so on and so forth, so I know them fairly good.
But in 2007, Cindy Dawson encountered something in these woods near her home that she'll never forget.
It was actually very dark. April had been a very rainy month. I have never been to the spot before except for that day. I think, looking back, if I would have known what was going to happen, I wouldn't have come in here. I walked up the road and entered in just on this old game trail right here. I just sort of deviated off this game trail because I was taking pictures of this archer right here when I turned around and looked, and there was 2 deer running right beside me, within feet of me. Those deer were not even one iota afraid of me. They were worried about what was behind them. So I scooted out that way because I didn't want to intercept whatever's coming up this way. Some gravel had sprayed across the road and it caught my attention, and I looked up and all I could see was a very small half-dome of a shadow that must have took off down the bank on that. And at that point, I took off running down the road. I could hear it running, breaking branches and limbs. It started screaming at me. It was just something I could not understand at all. It really scared me. I got back in here and I'm standing here like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? So I ran across the road and ran down the road to my cars as fast as I could. It was breaking trees down there again, and so it was following me back to my vehicle. I drove home, and I got in the door, and I started crying. I did not anticipate Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or anything of that. I didn't believe in it. You know, you're so close to a road, and you're so close to civilization, yet something so profound and so weird would make you feel that uncomfortable. I could hear it breaking branches and limbs. It started screaming at me, and I could hear it running.
We have reports of intimidation behavior, various forms, chest beating, projectile throwing, snag crashing, pushing of dead trees or even live trees in the direction of someone. There's a lot of reports of this.
Aggressive behaviors reported by Cindy Dawson and others have been documented in other animals, including apes.
Tree shaking is very much gorilla behavior. It's intimidation, release of tension, and the loud vocalizations are also very ape-like. Apes, like many mammals, have a home range where they feed and spend most of their time, and within that there may be a territory that's defended.
Based on witness descriptions, Indenagel suggests the theory that Sasquatch could be a primate, closely related to great apes.
I think the ape model is a very useful model because, the long arms and the short, thick neck is very ape-like. A lot of the behavior is very ape-like, stone throwing, the very loud vocalizations, the very strong smell that occurs sometimes.
Witness reports commonly describe the behavior and appearance of Sasquatch as ape-like. The largest of the great apes can stand about 1.8 meters and weigh up to 220 kilograms. While there's no evidence of great apes ever living in North America, some believe that the ape theory is not that far-fetched.
We really have a pretty good picture of it. And so you have this hypothesis that this is an upright great ape living in the forest of North America. North America provides the food and resources and habitat for such a great ape. And there is a very solid geological record of large mammals crossing the Bering Strait from Asia into North America. Most dying out, but in the Sasquatch, possibly not.
It's very unlikely that Bigfoot is another great ape that's just been forgotten about, missed by the scientists and ignored by history. We would have fossil record that would show a greater likelihood, and it would not depend entirely on the kind of very weak evidence that we have.
I work with the Nigeria Cameroon chimpanzee, which lives in Central Africa, but despite 20 years of tracking them and working very consistently in the field, I've only seen them about 10 times, and those sightings are very fleeting. But they leave behind very definitive evidence, such as feeding traces. That's how we track them. They leave behind fecal material. They leave behind footprints that are very easy to see and to track. So I would find it very unlikely that you would not find good evidence of such a large mammal in North America.
There's another theory that Meldrum raises to try to explain encounters like this one in Idaho. If such a creature does exist, it could be a species yet to be identified.
Large mammals continue to be found. The list of new species of primates is surprisingly long. We're talking about dozens of species, many of which have yet to be fully described and published in the scientific literature. So there still is plenty of room for discovery.
In the 1990s, a new type of chimpanzee was discovered in the Congo called the billy ape. And early in the 20th century, a new subspecies of gorilla, the Cross River gorilla, was identified in Africa.
If Bigfoot exists, it's probably a new genus that's very closely related to humans. But right now, we really don't have enough evidence to reach any conclusions as to what it is.
There's an amazing amount of information which obviously falls short of conclusive proof of the existence of a new species. It is very suggestive and compels me to pursue this. It takes the form of photographic evidence. Add to that the trace evidence of footprints and other forensic information. There's an impressive body of data that begs for further investigation and further analysis.
The places where Bigfoot is seen, those places are so close to where humans live, to our own habitat, that it would be much more likely that we would detect them if they were around.
We track relatively rare and endangered species pretty well. So Bigfoot has gone beyond being an endangered species. I mean, he's not, by the reports, Bigfoot's not endangered at all. He's commonplace. He's in New Jersey. He's in suburban areas. He's all over. The more we have reports of them, when we have so little evidence of an actual one, is suspicious.
next morning, at investigator Steve Cole's base camp in the Adirondack Mountains. He and his team are anxious to find out if their high-tech gear captured any sight of Sasquatch. First, Gary Robusto checks for results on the digital video recorder.
We've gone through the night. So far, we haven't found any evidence of the creature itself. We haven't seen him or her. As of right now, like I say, we don't know because we haven't really caught anything. But doesn't mean that's because we haven't seen it. Doesn't mean it's not here.
Coles next turns to the motion-activated trail cameras around the camp in the hope that they capture definitive evidence.
What we're doing now is we're looking at the cards on the cameras to see what pictures we have. Well, what we have is this camera is activated by some. Hard to say. It looks like
that might have been me putting it in.
Yep.
That's Gary.
Yep. That's this morning. That's me. Okay, that's when I picked the camera up.
They come up empty-handed.
Okay, so that's the pictures. We got zip for today. So back to the drawing board. I know it's out here. I've seen it.
The lack of conclusive evidence leads many to believe Sasquatch is merely legend, myth, or folklore.
We're watching a major myth develop in our lifetime. We're watching it. We're spectators to it. Yeti, the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, caught the American imagination in the 1950s. The Eric Shipton photos of the big tracks. And pretty soon our Bigfoot began to take on Yeti-like features. So these are well-known processes in cultural migrations and in folkloric processes.
Many different cultures have similar types of animals in their own mythology. It could possibly be that it's something that's deep in the human psyche that we need to think that there's something big and scary out there. Almost everybody has their version of the boogeyman.
Some people who have interpreted the Sasquatch in myth as the boogeyman or the boogeyman invented by Aboriginal parents to keep their children close to home. I think it may have been used in that way, but that does not necessarily discount its existence as a real creature. I'm willing to see a great deal of reality in myth. Having seen depictions of the Sasquatch in Aboriginal masks and pressed on totem poles, and having talked with Aboriginal elders who said, yes, we're talking about a real animal here, just like we depict beavers and wolves and orcas or whales.
Mythology does make the world seem a little bit magic, a little bit unknown, a little bit mysterious. And in some respects, you could say that Bigfoot fills that void.
But all these theories are not enough for Steve Culls, the Idaho teenagers, Cindy Dozen, and others around the world who believe they've crossed paths with this creature.
I think we're very close to resolving this question. I think that the evidence that will tip the scale, the DNA evidence, is very close at hand.
I believe if they bring me proof, strong scientific proof would have to be a carcass of Bigfoot, bones of something that might be related to Bigfoot, camera trap evidence.
As an investigator, I prove things in a court of law. I've got eyewitnesses. I've got circumstantial evidence, all put together. Given that, we could probably prove a Sasquatch exists in a court of law.
Without that evidence, there's not much to the argument, and I would say that the onus is on them to come up with that evidence.
It seems that Bigfoot is part of the human condition, whether it's a real physical entity or not.